So these are the cycles of our life. And remember that this Vimshottri Dasha system is based on what? Where your natal moon is at birth. That is how important the moon is when we're assessing a chart. So much so that I just got through writing an entire book on the moon, because when you understand the moon's placement in a chart, you're going to understand someone's mind, consciousness, and by looking at the dashas, their entire cycles of their lives. So there are 9 cycles of 9 planets, and this equates to 120 years. I find that fascinating because I believe that this is proof that we are supposed to live a lot longer than we actually do. But because of stresses and fear and all the things that we have going on in our lives are cut short. But the outer planets, I always have to say this because we have a lot of people that come from Western astrology trying to understand Vedic. In this system, we do not use the outer planets. So remember that. It's only going to be the 5 planets, the Sun, the Moon, and Rahu and Ketu. I'm going to be focusing on the Bhukti. You'll find that the Bhukti, which is the sub-level down, is going to give the results of what is actually happening in your life. While the Mahadasha is the big picture of what's going on, I kind of look at it as the Mahadasha ruling planet will rule like your country you live in. So that dictates your experiences. But to really hone it down to what the personal experiences are happening in your life at the time, it's going to be the next level down, which we call the Bhukti. Okay? So the Mahadasha's ruling planet will be analyzed to really understand what is the life experience, the cycle that you're in at that time of your birth. So you see the Mahadasha ruling planet, which is the planet that rules the dasha that you're in at that point in time. Its house placement, its house rulership, and its dispositor are going to give results. But the next level is we also take it to the nakshatra dispositor and the house that it is in, and it rules. When planets are in a house, they're tenants. But planets that rule that house are the landlord. Very important. So next, the Mahadasha as the ascendant. This is the most important rule of thumb that you have to understand. I love this technique. It is so powerful. So anyone, when you go into a new Mahadasha or when you're in a Mahadasha, pretend it's the first house, whatever house that Mahadasha ruling planet is in. Then you count to where the Bhukti planet is. However many houses it goes from the Mahadasha ruling planet will give you an idea of what is actually happening in their life. So, for example, if planets are in opposition from one another, let's say the Mahadasha ruling planet and the Bhukti goes to the 7th house, counting from the dasha ruler, so in other words, are in opposition, it will always deal with relationships. Why? Because the 7th house is relationships. But as I said before, if you count from the dasha ruling planet to the Bhukti and they go 4 placements, the Bhukti goes 4 placements from the Mahadasha, there's going to be a change of residence. Something changes about your house. So the most important transit while you're in a dasha Bhukti is going to be that planet that rules that Mahadasha Bhukti. So let's say you're in Saturn's Mahadasha. That means a transit of Saturn is the most important planet during that time. This is a way to really focus on specifics to give a prediction, because these dashas, I'm focusing in on the Mahadasha, the Bhukti, realize that there's about 7 levels that can go down in terms of sub-rulers. Now, that is so confusing, because then essentially you're taking in all these different planets. Which one is important? How do you know what's happening at that time? So what I'm trying to explain here is the most important transiting planet are the dasha rulers, and the natal placements of these 2 planets, Mahadasha and Bhukti, will be magnified when they're triggered by transiting planets. And what do I mean by triggered? You've got to know your aspects, drishti. You have to know what is going to be a trigger. So what are aspects? Are just the relationship the planets have, their spatial relationships to each other. This is so important to understand aspects, especially if you're going to predict, because you've got to understand that the planets transiting your natal planets. Your natal planets are your planets that are fixed at birth. And then the transiting planets are where the planets are continuing to move in the heavens. Always remember to look at Chandra Lagna. It's vitally important that you check it out from both ascendants, from the ascendant ruler as well as the moon as the ascendant. This will give the result of what the transit's about, because sometimes if you have Jupiter in a great house, what if it's 8th from the moon? It's not going to be as great as you suspect. And that's where your predictions can go wrong. So always check out secondarily. And, in India, they say that you should always check the transit from the moon first. It's more important because that's how you're feeling about things. Very, very important. So, predict marriage. What are the dasha bhuktis you're going to be looking for? You're going to be looking for the Mahadasha or the Bhukti ruling planet that rules the 7th house or aspecting the 7th house. And is it a benefic or a malefic? We've gone over this many times, like what we're talking about in Brad Pitt's chart. The dasha ruler in or ruling the 7th house in the Navamsha. This Rahu predicts marriage because Rahu expands like Jupiter. So you're going to want to be looking at Rahu's aspect to the 7th house as well, or the ruler of the 7th house. So Saturn, who would think Saturn has anything to do with relationships? But when you're predicting marriage and relationships, and you have both Jupiter and Saturn aspecting the 7th house or the 7th house ruler, you can predict marriage. Why? Because together they're a point of manifestation. Jupiter gives opportunities, but Saturn grounds things and makes it happen. So what are the first things we're going to look for in pregnancy? Jupiter, it's Karaka for children. And the second thing, where is transiting Jupiter when somebody wants to have a child? And realize this can be indicative of when a woman gets pregnant as well as when she could have the child. So sometimes you're kind of looking at 2 houses because there's a 9-month process here. So transiting Jupiter will be trining. It'll either be in the 5th house, in the 11th house, or 5 and 9 from the 5th house, which will be the 1st or the 9th, in order to be aspecting the 5th. Now you also got to turn it to Chandra Lagna. Is Jupiter in the 5th house from the moon, or aspecting the 5th houses from the moon? Okay, so, and the planet that rules the 5th house from the moon. So first the Jupiter has to be aspecting the 5th, ruler of the 5th, and then take it from Chandra Lagna, repeating the whole process. So, and the dasha ruler should be aspecting the 5th house, okay? And when the dasha ruler is in the 5th house, in the Navamsha or the Saptamsha chart, what the D7 chart is for children. But when you look at the Mahadasha or the Bhukti, if they're in the 5th house of the Navamsha or the Saptamsha, you can predict children as well. So remember, we're going to start using all our divisional charts, which are so very specific. The house of Dasha ruling planet is in will be exemplified when they're in a Mahadasha or a Bhukti. The houses that the Dasha ruling planets rule, that I'm talking about the Mahadasha and the Bhukti, and remember to make the Mahadasha ruling planet the ascendant and count to where the Bhukti is. And as you look at an entire Mahadasha sequence for that entire duration, look at each Bhukti, where it is relative to the Mahadasha ruling planet. And you will get a sense of what that entire cycle will be like based on the Bhukti's experiences from the Mahadasha ruling planet. And last but not least, look at the transiting planets of the Dasha ruler. And then, last but not least, look at the natal planets of the Dasha ruling planet and when it gets triggered. So many times I've seen this, and this will be the real true indicator of events. When somebody is like, let's say they're in Jupiter Rahu, and you have Rahu conjunct Jupiter. You know, you have transiting Jupiter conjunct Rahu when they're in Rahu Jupiter or Jupiter Rahu. You know a big event's going to happen because you see both the Mahadasha Bhukti being triggered by the same transiting planets. That's an event waiting to happen.